Good evening, members of the press, and welcome to this press conference wrapping up the 31st Inter-Sessional meeting here in Barbados. At the head table, we have the Chairman of CARICOM, the Honorable Mayor Motley, Prime Minister of Barbados. We also have the Honorable Roosevelt Skerritt, Prime Minister of Dominica, and the CARICOM Secretary General Ambassador Erwin LaRocque. We'll start this press briefing first with a statement from the Chairman of CARICOM.
Thank you very much. I'd like to welcome all the members of the media, and at the outset I'd really like to thank you for your patience and your tolerance over the course of the last few days. I know that many of you may have had different stories, but at the end of the day, you've been waiting now for the formal finishing of this meeting. I'm happy that we have been able, over the course of the last 2 days, to continue to advance the work of the region to the benefit of Caribbean people. This conference will come to be remembered as one in which we laid the footsteps for a number of key decisions. And yesterday morning, we would have started by reflecting that many of these decisions must have relevance to our people. And one of the most significant ones has been the work that we've started, that Prime Minister Mitchell has started with the settlement of roaming rates, a new regime for roaming within the community. The conference has agreed that Prime Minister Mitchell's technical committee will now meet with the telecommunications companies, and that we will await the final implementation of the regime, as well as the other areas of digital governance for which Prime Minister Mitchell has responsibility. We were also able, under the single market and single economy, to be able to take note and to reflect on a number of issues. We are firm of the view that we need to enhance our governance mechanisms, and to that extent, we've asked Prime Minister Gonzalez to be able to pull on technical working groups that were hitherto presented to heads of government and that may bear revisiting again because of the need for us to guarantee implementation across all of the member states. To that extent, therefore, we anticipate that a report will come to the next heads of government meeting that will review those technical working groups that came out of the Rose Hall Declaration in Montego Bay in 2003. Similarly, we've asked Prime Minister Skerritt, who is the lead Prime Minister on free movement within the region, to bring back up a review of all of the processes to further simplify how people move and whether there should be further categories of persons who should be allowed to move, for example, persons with CSEC certificates, and to be able to ensure that there is a wider pool of persons who can move. And we expect to take that report in July as well. We also agreed that the number of other agreements that have to be signed, some of which have been held up by the absence of the Legal Affairs Committee meeting, but in spite of that, we were able at this meeting to have a number of agreements signed by member states, Dominica, British Virgin Islands, St. Vincent and the Grenadines. There were a number of instruments of ratification, and all of these will be provided to you in the communique which the Secretariat will issue. Barbados, Belize, instruments of accession on the part of Belize to CAFSA, which is the Caribbean Agricultural Health and Food Safety Agency, and the Memorandum of Understanding was signed between the CARICOM Secretariat and the United Arab Emirates this afternoon, with the Secretary General signing on our behalf. With respect to the other aspects of the CSME, we took a very comprehensive report from the regional private sector organization and from the Caribbean Congress of Labor. And this perhaps is one of the most pleasing things for me, because as you know, 1 year ago we decided for the first time that we would want to bring the private sector and the Caribbean Congress of Labor to the table as associate institutions of CARICOM. And we met with them and gave them a task which would look at production integration across 4 areas: food security, renewable energy, air and maritime, transport, and ICT, information and communications technology, digital economy. The report that came sets out a pathway towards our being able to work towards substituting 25% of our food import bill, which at the current moment stands at about $5 billion US, that we would look to cut out 25% of that within the next 5 years. What was heartening is that they had a clear plan across livestock and crops, 7 key areas that would save the region $420 odd million US, but also would have the potential to be able to earn foreign exchange outside of the region. Now, this will require action on the part of private investors at all levels, but it would also require further action on the part of governments and the community to make it more seamless for that kind of production integration to take place, from Guyana and Suriname in the south to Jamaica in the north, from Belize in the west to Barbados and the Eastern Caribbean islands in the east. And to that extent, we believe that if we can stay the course on these issues, that the people of the region, in the same way that we hope they will see credible benefits to their telecommunications spend shortly, that they will also see in the course of the next few years a Caribbean that is committed to feeding itself more than it has within recent years. We also agreed that this plan and the plan of the Caribbean Congress of Labor would come to the Prime Ministerial Subcommittee, because in both instances, both plans were extremely comprehensive and now require the distillation of the subcommittee that I chair to be able to report back to heads on the basis of an implementation plan, and we have confidence that this will add serious value. One of the problems that has bedeviled the community for some time has been the issue of the CARICOM Development Fund. And we recognize, as I've said over and over, that in any single market, a single economy, there are winners and there are losers. And it is to that extent that Chapter 7 of the revised Treaty of Chaguaramas speaks to the issue of there being need for a fund to be able to assist disadvantaged countries, disadvantaged sectors, disadvantaged regions. Member states have committed to capitalizing this fund, but this will never be enough to do what needs to be done, particularly with all of the challenges that the region faces at this point in time. Yesterday I outlined a number of them, and we keep seeing new challenges, as we did with the COVID-19 virus. And to that extent, therefore, we feel strongly that we need to revisit the structure of the CARICOM Development Fund and to enable it to be able to raise additional funds, whether from individuals, companies, institutions, regional countries, and extra-regional countries. And why? Because this ultimately is what will drive the development of the disadvantaged countries or sectors that have been taken over, for example, by technological developments that would make these sectors obsolete, or incapable of being competitive, but you need a transition period, or indeed disadvantaged regions, because you may have a country that may otherwise be an MDC, but who has been so affected by a climatic or other event that it needs an injection of capital in order to stabilize it. This is going to be a long-term effort. And this, if done correctly, in my view, is going to be one of the key pillars and anchors of the integration movement going forward. It will allow us to deal with the disparities that exist with respect to size and capacity, and it will allow us to do so in a manner that those responsible for the drafting of the revised Treaty of Chaguaramas contemplated would be necessary in order to have as smooth a movement forward, carrying all from the very largest to the very smallest on this integration journey upon which we are committed. So, my friends, I hope that we will appreciate that this policy decision taken by heads of government will make that significant difference, and it will come back to us in the near future. We've agreed that to have 2 meetings a year only is not going to advance the work of the community. And perhaps that is one of the most significant results of this meeting, that we have accepted that we will try to meet at least once a month, even if we do the intervening meetings by means of the technology that connects us. Last year, we were able to use the technology in order to bring heads of government together on a number of key issues. It worked extremely well for us, and we believe that this can now be a part of our normal business. In addition to those things, we recognize, we took the draft final report on the Commission on the Economy, and that will set out a framework for new approaches and strategic interventions necessary in order to unlock further growth in our economies. Regional economies have generally underperformed in terms of growth as compared to other countries and regions across the world within the last 3 decades, and it is not our intention to continue along that line. One of the other major decisions taken by this conference is a recognition that the issue of crime and violence and security is one that we can not believe is the responsibility simply of governments, but that violence in the context of the Caribbean today and crime are effectively public health disorders, public health disease. And to that extent, we believe that it is critical that we bring together not only the heads of government of the region in a summit, but also partners from faith-based organizations to artists to sports people to teachers to CARFA, which is the Caribbean Public Health Organization, to members of the private sector, in order for us to have full and frank discussions about how we as a region, not as individual governments, but as a region, will begin to contain the difficulties that individual communities and countries are experiencing because of a change in behavior, a change in values, a change in attitudes. And we believe that the conversation cannot take place simply at the level of government or law enforcement, but that if we are to win the battle in the medium term, that we need to treat to this as a national and regional discussion and action plan that will see players across every sector of society being invited. I'm happy that the lead Prime Minister on Security, Prime Minister Keith Rowley of Trinidad and Tobago, has offered to host this summit, and that we anticipate that it will be in the near future, but we will await the Secretariat's communication as to what is convenient for everyone. But the message from heads of government is that this is an urgent matter for which we would wish to have a meeting within the next few months, certainly before the heads of government meet